How to tune your recorder in some easy steps. I'm Sarah and I'm a recorder player. The thing about the recorder is that the intonation is linked to how you blow. Listen to this. If I blow more and less, the pitch goes up and down. This makes it quite vulnerable. I see people coming up with weird and wonderful solutions from the beginning, pulling their recorder out, taking alternative fingerings. But then it just doesn't sound good. So before we even start tuning, I want to make sure you are blowing a beautiful sound. Okay? There's a few things you need to know before we start. The longer the instrument, the lower the sound. So that's why small recorders sound higher than large recorders. If you notice you are consistently way too sharp, that's too high, you can pull out your head joint a millimetre and that's going to drop your pitch slightly. Here's the second thing, the warmer your recorder, the higher it's going to go. So before you play, you want to make sure you warm up the block up here in your hand or under your arm. You might notice that your recorders play higher in the summer than they do in the winter, higher if you live in a hot country as opposed to a cold one. The first step before we even try to tune with other instruments is to be able to play in tune within the recorder itself. To practice this, I like to play intervals of a fifth. Getting used to that interval and how it sounds. Oh, Sarah, that sounds so boring. It feels like it's going to take a really long time. Yes, ear training takes a long time, but it's one of the most valuable things you can do as a musician. So, every time you practice, why don't you start with some lovely long notes playing because this will teach you about your instrument. You might notice, oh, this note's always a little bit low. I have to give it some attention. This note's a bit high. I have to relax it down. Because when you meet another musician that you're trying to tune with, you're going to be banging your head against a brick wall if you don't know how your instrument itself works. All of the tuning I do happens here in my ears and pretty much none of it with an electronic tuner. Wait, Sarah, shouldn't I get my tuner? I actually don't use a tuner almost at all for the recorder. Why? Because it doesn't take context into account. If I'm playing with somebody else, whether that's a keyboard or another recorder player, I would rather tune to them. So this is what my tuner looks like. It can be useful to train your ears. What does a fifth sound like? So when you're getting used to playing on your own. But I don't use it to tune with other players because I'd rather tune to them. I use my ears over my eyes. If I'm playing on my own, my instrument needs to be in tune with itself, but I don't necessarily need to match the arbitrary pitch of a tuner, if that makes sense. But okay, a tuner can be useful for one thing, and that's getting an overall sense of if your recorder is generally a bit high, a bit low, or on the money. This is how it works. I'm going to choose a note, play it with a full, confident sound, and see where that ends up on the tuner. I'm quite consistently a little bit high. That's a good thing because it's always easier to make your recorder longer than it is shorter. And this is important. A reliable factory-made instrument will be in tune with itself. I'm talking about Yamaha, Aulos, later to Merck, Mollenhauer, Kung. These are reliable, well-tuned instruments. And I'm sorry, but if you're playing a reliable model and it's not sounding in tune, it's probably you. So you need to work on breathing, blowing, filling the recorder with air at all times. If you're playing a bad instrument, if your recorder was $2, if it came free with a magazine, if you found it in a garage and it's covered in mold, and it's out of tune, yeah, you might want to look at getting an instrument that's not going to fight you the whole time. How to tune with other instruments. Tuning with a unison note, just blowing and blowing and hoping for the best? No. I never tune on a unison, I always tune on an interval. A fifth for me is the easiest to identify if I'm in tune. And I don't just keep blowing, but I actually move my pitch around. I purposely go a bit too sharp and a bit too flat. When you do this, you will feel the air kind of buzzing. You'll hear this interference when it's not in tune. And finally, when you hit that in tune note, that buzzing will disappear and everything will feel calm. When you feel that calm, you'll know I'm in tune. So don't be afraid of the process. We want to develop the reflexes so we can instantly adjust and be in tune from the start. But to get there, you have to do the work of learning how it feels when it's not in tune. So if I'm playing with another recorder player, we probably tune on an interval of a fifth, and we would choose notes from the piece that we're playing. So if we're playing a piece in C major, let's tune on a C and a G, etc. An easy trick is to go to the last chord of the piece and tune that, because it's going to feel really kind of, that's going to be in context. But what if you're tuning with a keyboard instrument? Please don't get them just to play the A and you play an A along with it. That's going to get you nowhere. With a keyboard instrument, I ask my accompanist to play chords, to keep spreading the chord. And then I would play up and down the chord. Kind of getting a sense of the whole. So with tuning on the recorder, two things are key: understanding and context. We understand that the longer the recorder is, the lower it sounds. The colder it is, the lower it sounds. But before we do any adjustments, we want to have a good solid airstream first. We blow more, we go sharper. We blow less, we go flat. But this all needs to be within the context of a good sound. Then when we go to tune, we're doing it in context. We're tuning in the harmony of the piece we're about to play, or at least using good, solid, open fingerings on the recorder. And we're not tuning on a unison, we're using chords and arpeggios. So what do you do if you're playing with other people and you're just really not in tune? First, make sure you're blowing enough. Often we get shy, we blow a bit less and everything feels flat. 90% of the time, if we blow with confidence, the tuning problems kind of sort themselves out. And when do we resort to alternative fingerings? I would say for intonation purposes, only as a very special effect, only as a last resort. This could be to create a different atmosphere rather than. Alternative fingerings should never get in the way of producing the sound that you want to play. I hope this practical guide to tuning a recorder is helpful. If you want to go more into the science behind tuning, including difference tones and temperaments and commas and all of this stuff, I did a much more in-depth video a while back, so check that out. As always, you can subscribe to my channel by clicking on my face on here. Here's the Team Recorder Patreon, where you can choose to support the channel, and here's some more videos. Thanks for watching, have a great day. Bye!